Today I'm going to be reviewing Howard's End by E.M. Forster. This book is one of my all-time favourites. I loved it so much. Whenever I was reading it, I would kind of stop after reading a sentence and feel like I wanted to write down the quote so I would never forget it. It was beautiful. The writing was poetic, but some parts almost seemed essay-like, but essay-like in a good way, not in a preachy way. As in, he made me think about life and death and all of these very philosophical questions within the novel. So it wasn't just a story, it was so much more than that. Forster was writing Howard's End in 1910, so kind of almost on this brink of this social revolution, which I really felt in this novel. Howard's End is about three families: the Wilcoxes, the Schlegels and the Basts. The Wilcoxes own Howard's End, and they are materialistic, very capitalist, seem very empty, so not a lot of humanity there. The Schlegel sisters, Margaret and Helen, are impulsive and idealistic. They have poetic discussions about literature and art, and about being charitable, about helping others, and are very socially aware. The Basts are a working class family. Leonard, Mr. Bast, could have fulfilled so many of these poetic ambitions, or could have been a poetic kind of person if he'd have had the money. And the Schlegels, being charitable, really want to help him, and the lives of the Wilcoxes, the Schlegels and the Basts are all connected throughout the novel. The novel begins with Helen, the youngest Schlegel sister, and Paul, the youngest Wilcox son, having a brief affair and engagement. However, the engagement quickly breaks down and is resolved into nothing. The connection that was formed between the Wilcoxes and the Schlegels after Helen's brief engagement leads Margaret Schlegel to become friends with Mrs. Wilcox. Howard's End, as I've already said, is a home of one of the Wilcoxes, and when Mrs. Wilcox dies, she writes a little note saying that she would like Margaret to have Howard's End, as she knows that their home has been taken away and is going to be knocked down. And then when the Wilcoxes see this, they obviously think that she must have been in the right mind, but really they just want to keep it in the family, the very capitalist thing of empire and inheritance, and that they feel almost betrayed by their mother, thinking that she would ever give their property to an outsider. However, the connections between the Wilcoxes and the Schlegels doesn't just stop after Mrs. Wilcox dies and leaves Howard's End to Margaret. Their relationship between the two families constantly come together, and a relationship develops between Margaret and Henry, the head of the household, the head of the Wilcox family, and I really enjoyed their relationship. In fact, all the relationships in these novels are really interesting, and in fact Forster's characterisation is probably one of the best I've ever read, I think. The Wilcoxes are seen as having a kind of lack of humanity, and for me that was a big part of the novel actually. Obviously the themes are inheritance and empire and money and social class, but for me it was all about humanity, what it meant to be good, what it meant to be a good human being. And through Margaret and Mr. Wilcox's relationship, friendship and all of that, he becomes a human. He changes, not greatly, but you understand him more. I think that's what really Forster wanted, was to show humanity and the different types of humans, the different types of people. Saying different types of humans makes them sound like some scientific experiment or something like that. All of the people in this novel are both stereotypes but individuals. You have the Wilcoxes, with Henry Wilcox as the head of the household being kind of, the person who owns the company, the capitalist boss who probably exploits people, doesn't really think about, doesn't have a great social awareness. You have the Schlegels with the charitable women's rights, kind of very chatty, very impulsive, maybe even annoying. Maybe, I think that's the stereotypes of the time for women who wanted the rights and were charitable, wanted to be involved in politics and social reform, were just very, seen as very kind of annoying, and they need to learn their place kind of thing. And these stereotypes that Forster uses, he makes them individuals. Each one isn't just a type. You know, you have these stereotypes and you know that's all they're to fulfill, but Forster creates each individual identity out of these stereotypes and plays with them and juxtaposes certain bits of their character. And you just know these characters so well. You leave knowing how Helen would sit on a chair, you know, she wouldn't just sit, she would jump into the chair, or how they would react, or how they would look, or how they would stand. And I've never felt like that with actual characters. I mean, maybe I have, but it really struck me in this novel just how great that was. The phrase "only connect," which is used a lot in this novel, connecting humans connecting people together, which is really, really, you know, throughout this novel, the connections between the three families, but connecting the different parts of people. For example, Mr. Wilcox, you know, he's very pragmatic, but yet throughout the novel at the end he connects with the other parts of him and makes him more human, makes him slightly more passionate and not so empty as I think he is at the beginning of the novel. I really, really enjoyed this book. It is one of my favourites, along with Jane Eyre and Sophie's Choice. It is definitely equal to those. It is spectacular. I've read two other Forster novels, A Room with You and Where Angels Fear to Tread, but this is my favourite. There is also a brilliant adaptation, which is a Merchant Ivory adaptation, who do lots of Forster adaptations, and they are incredible. The Howard's End adaptation is so close to the book. Some scenes are portrayed a little bit more elaborately, but that's obviously just because the film, we obviously, you know, you need to do that to make it really dramatic to be filmed. But they are fantastic, and I really hope if you only read a couple of classics in your life, let Howard's End be one of them.